In a realm where justice is often swift, the chilling reality of unsolved crimes lingers in the shadows and is nothing short of astounding. The mere existence of these cold cases, which remain shrouded in mystery for an extended period, is as perplexing as the heinous acts themselves. Today we embark on a journey through some of the most notorious crime cases that baffled investigators for years before the truth finally came to light. Join us as we delve into the enigmatic tales of the death of Nova Welch, the murder of Joyce Malone, the accidental drowning of Dalbert Apoian, the BTK killer, the Golden State Killer, and more. Brace yourself for a captivating countdown that unveils the resilience, determination, and ingenuity of those who relentlessly pursue justice, ultimately bringing closure to these haunting mysteries. In 1981, Nova Welch, a 24-year-old mother of two, found herself starting anew after leaving her partner, Osmond Bell, due to his reported violent behavior towards her. However, tragedy struck on August 18th of that year, when Welch's lifeless body was discovered in a cupboard at her home. The cupboard had been closed using a piece of chewing gum. In a surprising turn of events, Welch's friend received an anonymous handwritten letter claiming to be from a woman who witnessed an attack on Welch by the man she was dating at the time. Fast forward to 2017, over 35 years later, when Bell was finally charged with Welch's murder. The breakthrough came when forensic analysis matched Bell's DNA to the chewing gum and the envelope of the anonymous letter. Ultimately, he was found guilty of manslaughter and received a 12-year prison sentence for his involvement in Welch's tragic death. This case serves as a reminder that justice can prevail, even decades after a crime has been committed. For nearly 3 decades, the case of young Jacob Werling's disappearance remained a haunting mystery. It was on a fateful day, October 22, 1989, when Werling was biking home and was tragically abducted by an unknown assailant wearing a chilling stocking cap mask. The heart-wrenching truth is that he was never seen again. Despite relentless efforts, multiple individuals were questioned over the years, yet no one was ever officially charged in connection to his disappearance. However, in 2014, a glimmer of hope emerged as investigators decided to revisit the case. It was during this renewed examination that the name Danny Heinrich came to light. With the discovery of illicit materials in his home, Heinrich, perhaps driven by guilt or fear, made the decision to confess and take responsibility for Werling's untimely demise. Nevertheless, due to a plea deal struck with authorities, Heinrich was not charged with the actual murder, but was instead sentenced to a 20-year prison term for possession of the illicit materials found. This long-awaited resolution brought a measure of closure to the Werling family and a chilling reminder of the enduring impact of unsolved crimes. Thanks to groundbreaking DNA techniques, the fateful incident occurred back in September of 1998, when a young Anna Palmer was returning home from visiting a friend, only to be confronted with a horrifying attack on the front porch of her family residence in the serene Salt Lake City, Utah. Tragically, when Palmer's mother arrived home, she discovered her daughter in a pale and lifeless state, bearing the scars of multiple stab wounds. Despite the immediate efforts, Anna was pronounced deceased upon arrival at the hospital, leaving her loved ones shattered and the community in shock. However, a glimmer of hope emerged in 2010 when DNA evidence extracted from Palmer's fingernails was meticulously examined, ultimately connecting the dots to a man named Matthew Breck. Remarkably, Breck resided in close proximity to the Palmers during that fateful period. As justice prevailed, Breck was rightfully sentenced to life imprisonment, bringing a sense of closure to Anna Palmer's tragic story. On the evening of August 8, 1980, tragedy struck when Joyce Malone, a high school student, went out for a jog and never returned home, leaving her family in a state of anguish. 2 days later, her lifeless body was discovered behind her own school, sending shockwaves through the community. During the same fateful night, Philip Fournier, a young man involved in a truck theft, was involved in a serious accident that resulted in severe head injuries. Astonishingly, years later, in 2016, Fournier made shocking confessions to both his priest and mother, admitting to the murder of McLean. These confessions had remained concealed for an extended period of time. Fournier's defense argued that his head trauma had caused memory distortions, leading to the impulsive admissions. Nevertheless, despite these claims, Fournier was ultimately found guilty and held responsible for the tragic fate that befell Joyce McLean. In a tragic and heartbreaking story that spanned over 5 decades, justice was finally served for Irene Garza, a beloved schoolteacher and beauty queen from McAllen, Texas. Irene's life was cut short in April 1960 when she went to church for confession and never returned. Days later, her lifeless body was discovered in a canal, leaving the community in shock and mourning. Initially, suspicion fell on Father John Fate, the very priest who had heard Irene's confession. However, the case inexplicably grew cold, and justice seemed elusive. Shockingly, Fate had confessed his guilt to church officials, who chose to keep his dark secret hidden for years. Though he later pled no contest to a separate sexual assault case, he remained within the priesthood, evading justice for Irene's murder. It wasn't until a new district attorney assumed office that the case regained momentum. Finally, in a long-awaited trial, Father John Fate was tried and convicted for Irene Garza's murder. In 2020, he passed away in prison, ensuring that Irene's memory would be honored and justice finally served. May her soul rest in peace, knowing that her story has not been forgotten. Sherry Rasmussen's life appears picture-perfect, filled with love and success. She was happily married to John Rutten, and her career as the director of nursing at a medical center was thriving. However, tragedy struck on February 24, 1986, when Rutten returned home to a devastating scene. He discovered Rasmussen's lifeless body on the living room floor, shattering their once blissful existence. Initially, investigators attributed her death to a failed burglary attempt. However, Rasmussen's father firmly believed otherwise. He was convinced that LAPD officer Stephanie Lazarus, who had a romantic history with Rutten, was responsible for the heinous crime. Detectives dismissed his theory, brushing it off as a result of excessive television consumption and unsubstantiated speculation. But time has a way of unearthing the truth, even in the face of skepticism. It took 23 long years, but finally, through the use of DNA evidence and advancements in forensic technology, Lazarus was found guilty. The evidence presented irrefutable proof of her involvement in Rasmussen's murder, bringing a sense of closure to her grieving loved ones. Lazarus was subsequently sentenced to 27 years to life in prison, a small semblance of justice for the life that was taken. This tragic story serves as a reminder that justice can be delayed, but it can prevail in the end. Sherry Rasmussen's memory lives on, highlighting the importance of perseverance in seeking the truth and the dedication of those who tirelessly work to bring justice to victims and their families. On October 16, 1955, brothers John and Anton Schulzer, along with their friend Robert Peterson, embarked on a trip from their home in Chicago. The purpose of their journey was to attend a screening of the Disney documentary The African Lion in downtown Chicago. Tragically, the boys never returned home. After 2 days, their lifeless bodies were discovered in a ditch, victims of an unknown assailant. The shocking incident left their families and the community devastated. Over 20 years later, as the investigation into the disappearance of millionaire heiress Helen Voorhees Brash unfolded, a startling revelation came to light. It was revealed that a stable hand named Kenneth Hansen had allegedly bragged about being responsible for the deaths of the 3 young boys. However, it wasn't until nearly another 2 decades had passed that Hansen was finally apprehended and charged with the murders. Throughout the legal proceedings, Hansen maintained his innocence, though he ultimately passed away with serving his sentence in prison. The tragic fate of John and Anton Schulzer, as well as Robert Peterson, serves as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the world. Their untimely deaths and the long, arduous road to justice highlight the importance of diligence and perseverance in the face of such heinous acts. May their memories live on, and may we strive to create a safer and more just society for all. For nearly 2 decades, Jaycee Dugard vanished without a trace, as if she had been erased from the world we know. It was in 1991 when Dugard's life took a terrifying turn. On her way to the bus stop in Mayers, California, she was abducted by Philip Garrido, a convicted sex offender, and his wife Nancy. This traumatic incident took place right before the eyes of Dugard's stepfather, who valiantly tried to chase down the car, but unfortunately couldn't rescue her in time. From that moment onward, Jaycee Dugard endured a terrifying existence in captivity, hidden away from the outside world. She gave birth to 2 daughters during her captivity, all the while longing for freedom and a chance to see the light of day once again. And in a remarkable turn of events, that chance arrived in 2009. Philip Garrido, perhaps unknowingly, sealed his own fate when he made a trip to a college campus accompanied by Dugard and her 2 daughters. His suspicious behavior caught the attention of a diligent campus official who promptly alerted the parole office. This single act of vigilance would change everything. Garrido was soon brought in for questioning, with Dugard, her daughters, and Nancy by his side. Under the weight of the interrogation, Philip Garrido's resolve finally crumbled, and he confessed to the heinous crimes he had committed. At long last, Jaycee Dugard and her daughters were granted the freedom they had been deprived of for far too long. This story of resilience, survival, and the power of human endurance serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is hope. Jaycee Dugard's journey is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the indomitable will to reclaim one's life, no matter the odds. Jessica Lin Kean, a vibrant student and cheerleader, had her promising life tragically cut short on March 16, 1991. After being missing for 2 agonizing days, Kean's severely beaten body was discovered in a cemetery located in West Jefferson, Ohio. Initially, the authorities focused their investigation on her boyfriend as the prime suspect, but subsequent DNA evidence cleared him of any involvement. Shockingly, it took 17 long years before the actual perpetrator, Marvin Lee Smith, was apprehended. Smith, who had been living in Columbus, Ohio, was linked to the crime scene through DNA analysis. In a bid to evade the death penalty, Smith decided to plead guilty to the heinous act and was subsequently handed a sentence of 30 years to life in prison. On Christmas Eve 1985, the bodies of Minnie and Ed Morin were tragically discovered in a secluded wooded area in Washington state. The elderly couple had been mercilessly shot in the backs and callously dumped in the woods. This heinous crime immediately drew suspicion towards 2 local drug dealers, John and Rick Rife. However, despite the mounting suspicions, law enforcement faced a daunting challenge as they lacked substantial evidence to bring the brothers to trial. Witnesses were reportedly too fearful to come forward and provide crucial information. It took nearly 3 decades for justice to start taking shape. In 2012, thanks to a series of incriminating statements from witnesses, the police finally had enough evidence to make a significant move. They traveled all the way to Alaska to apprehend the Rife brothers. However, the pursuit of justice was met with a tragic twist, as John Rife passed away just 1 week prior to the arrest. Nonetheless, the legal system pressed forward, and Rick Rife faced the consequences of his actions. After a fair and thorough trial, he was found guilty and handed a sentence of 103 years in prison. While the families of Minnie and Ed Morin could never fully recover from the pain and loss caused by this senseless crime, the conviction of Rick Rife brought a glimmer of closure to their long-standing anguish. 25-year-old Diane Maxwell worked as a phone operator for the telecommunications company Southwestern Bell. Tragically, on December 14, 1969, while on her way to work, she was abducted and taken to a nearby shack where she was subjected to a brutal assault and ultimately lost her life. Despite an initial investigation, no substantial leads were uncovered, leaving the case unresolved. However, a glimmer of hope appeared when the case was reopened in 2003. prompted by the unwavering demand for justice from Maxwell's brother. Remarkably, the preserved set of fingerprints found on Maxwell's car proved instrumental in this renewed investigation. These fingerprints were successfully traced back to James Ray Davis, a notorious criminal with an extensive criminal record. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Davis eventually confessed to the heinous crime and was subsequently convicted, receiving a life sentence with no possibility of parole. This closure not only brought solace to Maxwell's grieving family, but also served as a testament to the perseverance of law enforcement and the importance of preserving evidence for future investigations. George Mason, a 69-year-old grandfather residing in a peaceful South Carolina suburb, was arrested in 2003 for the tragic murders of two El Segundo, California police officers. However, Mason's criminal history dates back to 1957, when he committed a heinous act of assault against two teenage couples, subsequently stealing their vehicle. While attempting to flee the scene, Mason was pulled over by officers Richard Phillips and Milton Curtis for a routine traffic violation. Fearing the consequences of being apprehended for his previous crime, Mason impulsively shot and fatally injured the officers. The key pieces of evidence that ultimately led to his capture were Mason's fingerprints found on the abandoned vehicle, and a distinguishing scar resulting from a bullet discharged by Officer Phillips. On September 22, 1985, tragedy struck when Roy Joe McCaleb was shot and killed while he slept. His wife Carolyn Krisanne Wilson initially claimed that an intruder was responsible for the crime. During the investigation, Krisanne Wilson informed the police that she had been attacked by a man 10 days prior to her husband's murder, suggesting that the same assailant had struck again. However, with no leads on any potential suspects, the case eventually went cold and remained unsolved for over 2 decades. In a surprising turn of events, the case was reopened and re-examined after 23 years. Investigators made a breakthrough when they discovered evidence pointing towards Krisanne Wilson's involvement in the crime. They discovered that she had devised a scheme to cash out 2 life insurance policies on her late husband. This revelation led to Krisanne Wilson's arrest, despite her age of 71, and her ongoing battle with lupus and Alzheimer's disease at the time. Ultimately, Krisanne Wilson pleaded guilty to the murder charges and received a relatively lenient sentence of only 6 months in jail. The case serves as a reminder of the complexities involved in criminal investigations and that sometimes surprising outcomes within the justice system. A deck of cold case playing cards played a pivotal role in resolving the 1979 murder case of Susan Schwarz, a 22-year-old woman. The unfortunate incident occurred at the hands of Gregory Johnson, the husband of Schwarz's friend. Johnson had a history of violence towards his wife, and Schwarz had selflessly aided her in leaving him and relocating to another state with their child. This act of friendship did not sit well with Johnson, as he harbored resentment towards Schwarz for interfering in his marriage. In a fit of rage, Johnson drove to Schwarz's residence, forcefully removed her from the shower, and shot her, resulting in her tragic death. Astonishingly, Johnson managed to evade justice for over 3 decades, until 2010 when an incarcerated individual recognized Schwarz's face on one of the cold case cards and recalled Johnson confessing to the murder. Following his apprehension, Johnson was subsequently convicted and handed a lengthy prison sentence of 24 years. On November 9, 1971, a shocking tragedy unfolded as John List annihilated his entire family in their Westfield, New Jersey residence before disappearing without a trace. The heinous act went unnoticed for almost a month until the gruesome scene was finally discovered. However, by that time, List had managed to put hundreds of miles between himself and the crime scene. Over the course of the following 18 years, List established a new life in Denver, Colorado, assuming a different identity and immersing himself in the role of an accountant. Remarkably, he even remarried during this period. As time wore on, the investigation into the case grew colder and colder, until it was featured on the television show America's Most Wanted in 1989. One of the List's neighbors happened to watch the segment and immediately alerted the authorities, leading to his arrest at his workplace. List was subsequently extradited back to New Jersey, where he faced trial for his heinous crimes. He spent the rest of his life in prison and passed away in 2008. The oldest case on our list is the perplexing murder of Dalbert Apoian, which remained unsolved for over 70 years. The tragic incident unfolded in July 1933 when young Apoian was reported missing by his concerned family. To their horror, just 6 days later, his lifeless body was discovered floating in the serene waters of San Diego Bay. The gruesome sight of Apoian's mutilated corpse sent shockwaves through the city, instilling fear of a deranged killer lurking in their midst. Diligently investigating the baffling case, the authorities interviewed Jack Confer, a close friend of the deceased, who asserted that Apoian had accidentally fallen into the bay while they were fishing together. However, this theory was promptly dismissed by the coroner, who deemed it implausible. It would take several decades until 2005 for detectives to officially declare the incident as an unfortunate accident, attributing the boy's injuries to the actions of crustaceans and fish. Eaton Pats, a young boy who left home for his school bus stop on the morning of May 25, 1979, tragically disappeared and was never seen by his loved ones again. This devastating event captured national attention and played a crucial role in initiating various movements aimed at combating child abductions. Despite exhaustive efforts, no substantial leads emerged, leading to the legal declaration of Pats' death in 2001. However, in 2010, the case was officially reopened, breathing new life into the investigation. In a significant breakthrough, the police received a tip from Pedro Hernandez, brother-in-law. Hernandez had worked at a nearby bodega during the time of Pats' disappearance and reportedly confessed to his prayer group in the 1980s. He eventually admitted to attacking Pats when questioned by the police and is currently serving a life sentence for his heinous crime. The BTK killings began in 1974 when tragedy struck the Otero family of Wichita, Kansas, on January 15th. 4 members of the family lost their lives that day, marking the start of a series of heinous crimes. Over the next 17 years, the killer claimed the lives of 6 more victims and taunted law enforcement with mysterious letters, in which he shamelessly boasted about his horrific acts. However, after 1991, the murders abruptly stopped, and the letters ceased as well. The case gradually grew cold, and it seemed as though the killer had vanished into thin air. That was until he resurfaced, reigniting his written communication with authorities. It was later discovered that the BTK killer was none other than Dennis Rader, a seemingly ordinary church official. Rader had made a fateful mistake when he sent his writings on a floppy disk, unaware that the metadata embedded within would lead back to him. As a result, he was eventually apprehended and sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms for his monstrous crimes. Starting in 2002, Ariel Castro committed a heinous crime by kidnapping 3 young women, Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Georgina De Jesus, and keeping them captive in his home for over a decade. During their horrifying ordeal, all 3 women endured constant physical and emotional abuse at the hands of Castro. However, on May 6, 2013, after 10 long years of captivity, Berry managed to escape from Castro's house, courageously bringing her 6-year-old daughter with her. A compassionate neighbor provided assistance by helping her contact the police, ultimately leading to the rescue of the other women and the subsequent arrest of Castro. The unimaginable extent of his crimes became clear when he was indicted on nearly 1,000 criminal counts, including kidnapping, assault, child endangerment, and aggravated murder. Following a life imprisonment sentence, Castro tragically took his own life in his cell approximately 1 month later. This case serves as a chilling reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the need for justice in the face of such horrific acts. One of the most infamous cold cases in criminal history revolves around a series of crimes that plagued California from 1974 to 1986. Initially believed to be the work of 3 distinct individuals, advancements in DNA technology eventually revealed that they were all the sinister handiwork of a single perpetrator. Dubbed the Golden State Killer by crime writer Michelle McNamara, this unidentified criminal terrorized communities across the state for over a decade. However, in April 2018, a breakthrough occurred when former police officer Joseph James D'Angelo was apprehended. Investigators successfully matched crime scene DNA with that of one of D'Angelo's relatives, leading to his arrest. At the age of 74, D'Angelo was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, finally bringing closure and justice to the victims and their families. These 20 cold cases that were finally solved represent more than just the resolution of a mystery. They represent the triumph of justice over darkness, the power of perseverance in the face of adversity, and the resilience of the human spirit. Each one of these cases is a testament to the unwavering dedication of law enforcement, the advancements in forensic technology, and the tireless efforts of those who refuse to give up. As we reflect on these stories, let them serve as a reminder that no matter how long it takes, the truth can and will prevail. May these resolved cases bring solace to the families and loved ones who have long awaited answers, and may they inspire us all to never stop seeking justice. Thanks for watching. If you haven't, please consider liking and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.